I'm not looking for a new car, a new house, or anything out there physically that I think have the illusion that's going to bring me happiness. It's not going to happen. If you help enough people get what they want in life, you'll always get what you want. I think Mother Teresa taught us that. How many cars did she own? None. How many houses, properties did she own? None. And she was one of the happiest people on the planet.
From the city of Peaky Blinders, Birmingham, England, I would like to introduce you to Paddy Danda.
As the world becomes more automated and the robots take over, it's imperative that we build the right human skills for the future. So pull up a chair, grab a samosa or two, and make yourself very uncomfortable. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me today on this particular episode. I have an amazing guest who has a bunch of amazing stories, which I can't wait to get into. So, Dave, Albin, welcome to the show. And where are you calling from today, David?
I live in a really gorgeous, beautiful place in the United States. I'm in the Appalachian Mountains, which is in the northwestern part of the state of North Carolina, which is about 2 hours northwest of Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm right on the Tennessee and Virginia border. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Nice. Well,
Nice.
I'm really jealous because I'm in Birmingham and I'm sure you have a much better view outside of your window than I. But hey, we'll put that one to one side. And
Come visit, Patty. Come hang out, man. You can come anytime.
brilliant. There you go. This is why I do this podcast, Dave, because I mean, amazing people like yourself. And I sometimes get these invites. And equally, when you're in Birmingham
Absolutely.
next, you've got to come and visit. And I'll take you out for the best curry that you've ever had if you're into curry.
Done deal. Absolutely.
There we go. So, Dave, what superpower would you like to bring to this particular episode?
Well, I think the superpower for me has been understanding how important it is to create my own story. And when we create our own story, we're the architect of that story. That's what empowers us. In other words, it's what we believe about ourselves and who we are and what we're doing and our purpose. And is our purpose divine, or is it just driven by some kind of outside source? As we were talking before the show, Patty, I think it really comes down to my superpower is I've learned how to live from the inside out, opposed to living from the outside in. I'm not looking for a new car, a new house, or anything out there physically that I think have the illusion that's going to bring me happiness. It's not going to happen. It says it on my website. If you help enough people get what they want in life, you'll always get what you want. And for me, that's a sweet spot.
I love that. So often we get blinded by this materialism and these materialistic things. And I guess what you're saying there is actually to be truly happy, there are other aspects, and those are about service to others, for example, and some of the other things that we do on a daily basis, but we may not realize that they could lead to that happiness. And Dave, I know you're an expert in this area because you were telling me you've previously worked with a guy that people may have heard of, a guy called Tony Robbins, for about 20 years. So could you tell us about that experience and like what happened there?
Well, the smart aleck answer here in the United States is I made that left-hand turn at Albuquerque. So actually what happened was I got sober in 1988. I was grossly addicted to heroin and cocaine and alcohol, and I was struggling really bad, very suicidal. And I made a really important decision that day. And as Tony would say, it's in our moments of decision that our destinies are shaped. Well, that sure held true to me that day on June 8, 1988, as I called an organization called Alcoholics Anonymous, which is global. And I went to my first meeting and it stuck. And I fell in love with AA. And for the first time in my life, I actually felt like I belonged somewhere. And the men were in that group. It was an all men's group. They loved me until I could learn to love myself. And so I took to it like a duck to water. Well, during that process, I had insomnia and I was up late one night and there he was, 1988. There's a young Tony Robbins, right? Selling a program called Personal Power. It was a 30-day program and you did it at home. So when you bought the program, they sent it to you, came in a big box and it came on these little white things called cassette tapes. Right. And so, yeah, man, you plugged them in, you went through it, and I did what the man taught me to do, and it worked. Well, that was all going down in 88 and 89. Well, in 1995, I found out that Tony was coming to my city in DC. Northern Virginia. It's where I was living at the time. And so there I was at a Tony Robbins seminar with 3,500 people. Well, I found out after I got the ticket that we were going to be doing a firewalk. This is literally where you walk across hot coals, right? Firewalk has been around 1,000 years. You can Google it, find out all kinds of really cool information. So I made a decision. I'm not doing it. It's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I want to see Tony. I want to check out what he's got to teach me. I want to come to this live event, but I am not going to do this firewalk. Well, Tony took the stage at like 2:00 in the afternoon that day. And next thing I know, it's 10 hours later, literally. It's after midnight. And all of a sudden, Tony goes, take your shoes off. And I went, oh, no. No way, pal. I know where you're going with that. You're not tricking me into that. Well, I got a problem. I'm in a room with 3,500 people. Guess what they're doing? They're taking their shoes off. So now what am I going to do? Not take my shoes off and everybody go, hey, look at Dave over there. He's a coward. So I'm like, so calm down, relax, just take your shoes off. And when you get out there, just go hide in the back. No one's going to know except you, right? Me. And so that was my plan. Well, when Tony's got everybody going out there into this giant parking lot where he's facilitating this firewalk, he gets everybody to start clapping and chanting. So now you've got 3,500 people walking out there going, yes. And I'm walking out there going, no, it's not going to happen. Well, it gets worse. Because as soon as you get out there, physically out there, he's got African drummers. So now you've got the intensity of those African drums, right? And man, Teddy, it's crazy. It's a dog and pony show like you've never seen in your life. And so I go out, I go hide in the back, right? Well, Tony Robbins knows that the firewalk is probably one of the most life-changing experiences any human will ever go through. That's why he brought it into his events. And he also knows there's people like me. And he also knows where we are. So what's he do? He trains people to come find you. So I'm in the back. I got it all figured out, right? No, I don't. Because here comes this guy out of nowhere, and he makes eye contact. And he gets, I don't know, maybe 20 feet from me, something like that. And he's looking at me really funny, like a dog that hears a funny noise, right? And he says, he points at me, he goes, hey man, are you okay? And of course, when we're not okay, what do we say? Oh, I'm fine. I'm good. Nothing to see here, pal. Move along. Well, he goes right for the kill shot. Immediately, he goes, hey man, you going to walk tonight? And I'm like, absolutely not. I'm thinking, you idiot. Why do you think I'm hiding in the back? And he's like, hey man, that's cool. No problem. Listen, we don't want you to do anything you don't want to do. And I went, whoa, okay. I like the sound of that. Well, he's setting me up. That's what he's doing, because he turns around right after that and he says, let me ask you a question. He said, wouldn't you at least like to watch? Well, I'm thinking, sure. Yeah, let's watch these idiots burn their feet off. He says, listen, man, you can't see anything from where you are back here. I'm 100 yards away. Literally, I can't see anything. I can hear it, right? They're clapping, they're chanting, the drums are going, they're already firewalking, they're in a celebration, and people are screaming and yelling with exhilaration. There's a giant fire over here in the corner. It's huge. It's probably 35 feet wide, and it's got to be 70 feet long. And they've been burning this fire all day. And so how do you firewalk 3,500 people? You build a big fire. You let it burn all day. You just keep throwing wood, hardwood, like oak and hickory and locusts on it all day. And at the end of the night, it renders, which means you have a big giant pile of blue coals. And so what they do there is they would load the coals in a wheelbarrow. Then they bring a wheelbarrow in and they lay 2 lanes of sod of grass on each side of it. They just take a flathead shovel and they sprinkle the coals on that grass. I think they call it turf in the UK. And they pat it down so the coals don't stick to your feet. And that's what you walk on. Well, again, I'm having none of it. So I decide, okay, I'll go watch. I'm good with that part. Well, so I get in line, right? That was the tricky part. He got me in line. That's all it took, right? So I'm in line and walking along, and another stranger comes up to me. And he whispers in my ear, and he's like, he knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go. And this guy just went, pew, and he disappeared into the night, right? And I'm like, what? what does that mean? What do you mean he knows when you're ready? When he says go, you go. Right? I'm like, what? And so now I'm just walking along. And remember, I've got several thousand people in front of me. I can't see anything. Again, I can hear it. Well, I actually get to a point in the crowd where I can't see in front of me. I can hear them doing it, but I can see at an angle. And Patty, they're doing it. These people are walking on fire. And my brain is like, what? Why would they do this? We're mammals. We're taught to run from fire, not walk on it. And I'll tell you, I saw every race created color walking. And so I'm mesmerized, right? I'm like, I can't take my eyes off it. It's like a car accident. You say you're not going to look at it, but you do. Well, I'm staring at it. Well, I'm not paying attention to what's happening in front of me. And I'm walking along and boom. Next thing I know, guess where I am? I'm at the front of the line. And I'm like, how the hell did you get here? And so now I'm staring down at that fire lane, right? It's like 3 feet wide. It's about 15 feet long. And the coals are bright red. There's no question that they're hot. Plus the wheelbarrow's right there. You can feel the heat coming from that. And I'm scared to death. My heart is beating so hard, it's going to bounce out of my chest any second. So as I'm staring into the abyss, there's a trainer standing right there. And all of a sudden the trainer goes, eyes up. It's like startled me, right? I bring my eyes up. Well, when I was in the room with Tony for 10 hours, guess what he teaches you to do? Keep your eyes up. Don't stare at what you fear. Interesting metaphor, right? Don't stare at what you fear. Look at the celebration. That's where the reward is. And so that's what I'm doing. So now my eyes are up and the trainer goes, squeeze your fist and say yes. He's trying to activate physiology, right? And I said, yes. He went stronger. Then I went, yes. He's like, he knew, he could tell. He knew I wasn't in a peak state. He could tell I was leaving a lot on the table. So what's he do? He like gets in my face and screams at me. And he's like, strong. I threw my hands in the air and I'm like, yes. And he goes, go. Boom. I took it. Right? Remember the guy? He knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go. I did. Well, here's the first thing I learned about firewalking. When you take the first step, oh, you'll take the second, third, fourth, and fifth. I promise you, right? Well, Tony stages 2 guys at the end and they lock arms and they catch you. And they're like, stop, wipe your feet and celebrate. And I'm wiping my feet and I'm celebrating. And for a second, I thought I burned myself. I didn't. My feet were dirty. I'm like looking at them. There's no burns. And I don't know how to explain it other than it was one of the most exhilarating moments of my entire life. I felt like I could do anything. I had just walked on coals that are 1,000 degrees and I didn't burn myself. And what's interesting about that moment was I didn't know how I did it. I did it. I was successful at it, but I didn't know how. And that's what I chased. How did you do that? I took credit. Like I said, yeah, that's me. I did that again today. But again, I didn't know how I did it. And so now you're down there with 3,500 people and we're all jumping up and down. It's exhilaration. Again, it's like, where's the bus? Let's go. Get on it. Let's go climb Mount Everest. Because that's what you're thinking. It's that life-changing. It's phenomenal. Well, I'll tell you where it got really interesting for me was the next day. The night we did the firewalk, I didn't know anybody. Nobody knew me. I didn't know anybody. But the next day, by the way, this is a 4-day event. That was day 1, that night, late night. Now we're in day 2. We're all standing in the foyer. We're getting ready to go into the venue for day 2 with Tony Robbins. And I have never seen or witnessed anything like it in my life. It was absolutely beautiful. It's just gorgeous because I'm watching people communicate the way we're supposed to communicate. People are laughing, they're hugging, they're talking about the firewalk, they're talking about their fears. Some people are crying, they're emotional. I mean, it was just intense. And what's interesting is I felt like I knew every single one of them personally. Like, you know what I mean? There was this instant camaraderie, this connection between us. It was just magical. Well, later in the event, I met one of Tony's trainers. And I'll get to your question. How did you get involved with Tony Robbins? So I'm talking to this guy, Ted Macy, really great guy, trainer, and his wife, Mary, were both trainers. And so I'm just talking with Ted, and I asked him straight up. I said, so what's it like being in this environment on a regular basis? And he goes, dude, are you kidding me? This is phenomenal. And he goes, and if you can get in here, become part of this community, because it'll change your life forever. He goes, by the way, you see those people standing over there? I'm like, yeah. He goes, see the ones with the black shirts and the pink writing on the back? I'm like, yeah. He goes, dude, they're volunteers. They're just like you. They came to an event and wanted to come back and get in the environment. So all they did was call Robbins Research, and they got an application. They filled it out, they sent it in, and they got approved. So you can do the same thing. And so I did. I went home. I called Robbins Research. They sent me the application. I filled it out. I sent it in. And like 9 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. And it said, Dave Albin, congratulations. You've been selected to crew with the Anthony Robbins companies. Well, holy mackerel. And so there I was. I was at my first event. Well, when you fill out the application, you give them a lot of information. So they knew I had a military background. They knew I had a security background. So they decided to use me to help take care of Tony's celebrities, which was freaking awesome. I will tell you, that team, the guys were amazing, a lot of fun, a lot of celebrities. I could do a whole podcast just on that portion of my career with Tony Robbins.
Can you tell us some names on that, Dave? Like what sort of celebrities?
Name somebody. I don't know, Oprah, Pitbull, Usher, Chuck Liddell, Debbie Gibson, just you name anybody you can think of that was a professional athlete, an Olympian, an entertainer, actor, actress. They probably have been there. And so, and again, you know what? There's so many, I can't even begin to tell you. But if you want to watch a really fun firewalk, and if you want to really see what happens, what somebody's going through in their mind and how they're dealing with it, go Google Oprah's Firewalk. It's phenomenal because it's live, it's real, and you can see exactly what somebody goes through. So anyway, because I had a farm, and I knew how to use a log splitter, and I knew how to use an axe and kindling and wood stoves, and I knew all that stuff, right? And tools. They put me on the fire building team because they need 40, 50, 60 people or more sometimes to help facilitate. We were talking before the show started, and we set a world record in London in 2005. And that's where we firewalked out on the Docklands, right? The Excel Center out there. We firewalked 12,300 people. And so to facilitate a firewalk that enormous, you need 70 people out there in the parking lot, building it, putting together, doing all the training, and then cleaning it up when you're all done. So long story short, I got pulled into the fire team. I became an assistant captain. They actually started paying me to go. Most of the volunteers have to pay their own way. And so you spend $1,500, $2,000 to go, right? Because you're going to fly wherever the event is. You got to pay for your hotel. You got to pay for all your travel. You got to pay for your food. And it's easy to spend $1,500 or more as a volunteer crew member. Well, again, when I got hired as a subcontractor, they actually paid for all that, which was really great, which, by the way, my wife appreciated. Because I'm doing all this Tony Robbins stuff, and she didn't even know who Tony Robbins was. But yet I'm spending $1,500. She wasn't real thrilled about that. Well, when they hired me as a subcontractor, they did something really smart. They gave me a free ticket. And so I got to take my wife, which was phenomenal. And she went, and after she graduated, we took a walk on the beach. And she was like validating. She's like, okay, I get it. This dude's a badass. Tony Robbins is a pretty cool guy. You want to run with this dude, as long as they're paying for it, go for it. So she just opened up the door wide for me to travel around the world, which really paid off because later in 2003, excuse me, Tony offered me the captain's position. And what that meant was I would be in charge of all of his firewalks globally. Well, he also did something else that was really phenomenal. Because I was homeschooling my kids at the time, Tony paid for my family to travel on the road with me. So my wife and my two kids at the young age of 6 and 9, which by the way, that's how old they were when they firewalked the first time. So they got to go on the road with their mom and dad and Tony Robbins and travel all over the world. In fact, their first event was in Sydney, Australia. So what an incredible family experience that was. Because there we are, London, Europe, Hawaii, all over America, Canada. My kids are on the road with dad and their mom. So that was a beautiful thing. So that all happened in 2003. The world record I'm talking about, we did that in 2005. Now, I do want to clarify something for your listeners. Guinness Book of World Record was not there, but I refer to this as a world record. Why? Because it was. That's the biggest firewalk in our planet's history. And the only thing that comes anywhere close to that is another Tony Robbins seminar. And then to move this forward, in 2014, my phone rang and it was Google. And they're like, hello. And they're like, yeah, are you this Dave Albin? Yeah, is this the Dave Albin that does the Firewalk for Tony Robbins? Yeah, what can I do for you? Well, if you're not under any contractual obligation or non-compete, we'd like to talk to you about hiring you. And I'm like, well, homeboy's a free agent. What you got? And so the next thing I know, I'm being contracted to go to corporate headquarters in San Mateo or Mountain View, I should say. And I was being hired by Google. And so that was the turning point for me. That's when Firewalk Productions was born. In fact, something really interesting happened when I was there. I put on an event for 148 executives. And lunch, I was talking to one of them, and she said to me, she said, Dave, you're really not in business for yourself. You're still working for Tony, aren't you? Yeah, I am. She said, you may want to think about starting your own company. She said, you're the man. You're the guy. She said, corporate America will eat you alive because you create an experience so powerful, so life-changing. This is exactly what corporate America needs. It's what they're looking for. Because you could take a bunch of people that aren't getting along, and when you're done with them, they'll get along, right? So it destroys dissension and all of that. And she was spot on. It was Google. Google's telling me I should start my own business. Well, if Google tells you should start your own business, let me encourage you to think about that really hard. I did. So Firewalk Production was born in 2014. I went back to Tony and said, Tony, I love you. And he goes, you're leaving, aren't you? And I said, yeah, I'm going to retire. And when I left him in really great shape, there were 6 people out there in the parking lot at all these firewalks that could do my job. And so he was fine. And so when that woman told me, that executive told me corporate America would chase me down to get me to come create these life-changing experiences, she was spot on, because shortly after I did Google, I went to NASA, and then I went to Notre Dame, and then I went to Remax and Chick-fil-A and Heineken and Remax and Microsoft and the YMCA. The next thing I know, I'm on this podcast with you, Patty, right? You don't know, right? You just don't know. But here's the key. You got to be ready when that call comes. And I was. And no pun intended, but since 2014, we've been going hot and heavy ever since.
Wow. Oh my God. I was sitting there patiently listening to you, Dave, because honestly, you have this ability for storytelling that I just didn't want to interrupt you at any point there, because it would have just ruined the flow. And I really appreciate you telling that story. And Tony Robbins, he has this persona that we all see in the public. How did you find him at a personal level? Like, is that how he is, like, even behind the scenes? And what are some of your big takeaways that you've learned from working with him? And how have you applied that ever since?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Tony treated me and my family like gold. Wonderful. He loved my kids, still does to this day. Obviously, there was a deep friendship that developed because I'm out there in the parking lot with my team week after week, busting my tail. And he knew that's a hard job because I had to oversee the whole thing. So I had to deal with fire departments, police departments, city managers, city attorneys, all of it. And if you work in Tony Robbins' world, if you drop the ball, you're out, right? There's no room for error there. So it was beautiful. And again, he treated my family, my kids, he loved them. He was so warm. And so was his wife, Sage. She was wonderful to my kids. She loved my daughter because, my daughter would hang out with her and they'd run around the events. It was beautiful. It was just a wonderful experience. And and to this day, of course, it affected my kids. If you look at my kids today, they're extremely successful, extremely happy. And a lot of that came because they got to travel around the world with their mom and dad and Tony Robbins and Sage Robbins. So it was a beautiful thing. As far as takeaways, sheesh, where do I start? I think probably some of the lessons that are at the absolute top was, as Tony said, fulfillment or achievement without fulfillment is failure. Very interesting dynamic. State management. I talk about all the time that basically we have 3 questions that are going on in our heads on a regular basis. And basically those 3 questions come down to, are we focusing on what we have or what we don't have? Are we focusing on what we can control or what we can't control? And then the other question is, are we in the past, the present, or the future? And so I think one of the most powerful lessons, and I talk about this from this stage to this day, is our story. You want to change your life? Change your story. Every single thing that happens to us, how good or bad it is, we create a story. We're the architect of that. And that's the driving force, because we're creating purpose in and around that story. And so from my perspective, again, being in Tony's world all those years, that was really key to me, because I met people that were multimillionaires and billionaires, and they were miserable. Money didn't change. It didn't. You know, it gave them little perks. You buy a new house, you get a new car, but that always dies off. But when you can take a 10-year-old kid who's been abused, and they come to an event, and you take them through the board break, you show them how to break a board with their bare hands, and then they throw the board in the fire, and then you come back and you firewalk them, you changed and influenced their life forever. I open up that mindset of, now you can change your story because you're in control. The bottom line is, it doesn't matter. You get to create your own story, which will be the driving force within you. And the higher your purpose is, the more divine your purpose is, the sweeter your life becomes. Because that's where happiness is, I believe. The key is, if you help enough people in life get what they want, you'll always get what you want. I think Mother Teresa taught us that. How many cars did she own? None. How many houses, properties did she own? None. And she was one of the happiest people on the planet. Why? Because she put herself in the depths of just death and destruction and just some of the most horrible places on earth. And she was constantly giving. Right? And that's really the key. And so I learned a lot of that came from Tony's world. And I teach that today. And then really, again, it doesn't matter. One of the things I do, I trick my audience. I probably shouldn't say this, but I will. So when I'm doing, right, I get hired by a corporation or whatever, I put a picture of a guy on the screen behind me, and his name's Eric Weinmeier, and you can tell where he's standing. And so I'll talk for 20 minutes, and then I'll say, by the way, who here could tell me where my friend Eric is standing? And then somebody will yell it out, Mount Everest. And I'll say, that's correct. And by the way, here's the thing. He's on the summit. He got all the way. He's also climbed the 7 highest mountains on earth. And he got to the summit of all 7, including Mount Everest. But here's what you don't know about Eric. He's blind. So I don't want to hear it. You have no excuse. You've got nothing, period. If a blind man can climb the 7 highest mountains on this planet, what do you think you could do? So that's the beauty, right? I think Henry Ford said it. If we think we can or we think we can't, we're right. And so that's really the key. State management. And again, what you can control, what you can't control. What you have in life or what you don't have. What are you focusing on? And so once you learn to control that, also the past, present, and future, then you can really enhance your life. You can really take it to the next level. Patty, my life has been spectacular, but that doesn't mean I didn't go through my share of shit. We all do. That just happened. In a book I read, we were talking about this before you hit the record button. One of the greatest books I ever read was Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl. And it's a hard book to read. I'm going to warn you, it's not easy. It's pretty rough because the man was in Auschwitz. And from the moment they put him on the train and took him there, his life obviously was highly affected, just like every other person, or in this case, for the most part, it was the Jews, and who obviously Hitler wanted to eradicate them. And so there he was, found himself in Auschwitz. Well, they assassinated his family. Imagine what that would be like. And imagine what that would do to your psyche. But here's what Victor figured out. He said, you could take everything from me. You could put me outside naked in the cold. Don't feed me for a week. You take everything away from me, all my dignity, all of it, my hope, my dreams, all of it. He said, but there's one thing you can't take from me. I have to relinquish it. I have to let you take it from me. And that is his ability to control his attitude. You can't take my attitude. I have to give it to you. And so what he developed was a very high sense of purpose. And that came from him deciding that someone has to get out of here and tell this story. And so he took what probably, again, was one of the most worst, horrible parts of his life, and it created so much knowledge, so much wisdom about the human spirit and what we go through. So though his book is really hard to read, I highly recommend that you do it.
I was just thinking there, like when we're young children, we're pretty open to any possibility, right? Like a child would say, I want to be an astronaut, or I'm going to climb mountains, and they see no constraints. But then as we become older, and as you've been talking about, you've been working with leaders from these big corporates, and they have this life-changing experience when they do a firewalk, for example. Like, what in your opinion changes us during that time of being in that childhood mindset to being able to achieve anything, to now being very particular about the goals that we set and finding things like super challenging?
Well, I believe that what doesn't challenge you doesn't change you. Not going to happen. It's not the way it works. Because everything you've ever wanted is sitting right over there on the other side of your comfort zone. And so I believe when you do the hard things in life, it will become easier. If you do the things that are easy in life, it's going to become harder. You got to get off your butt. It's like, look how we treat old people. Oh, don't take them outside. It's too cold. Are you kidding me? What do you think keeps their immune system high? We baby them. We pamper them. No, absolutely. I'm 70. Okay. Guess how many medications I'm on? None. Zero. So I know that there's great value in nutrition, good water, and my regimen every morning. I get asked this a lot. So Dave, what's the first thing you do when you get up in the morning? I make my bed. Interesting. Yeah, because it's a discipline. What's the second thing you do? I do deep diaphragmatic breathing. I take 90 really deep breaths. It hurts. It doesn't feel good. And I hold my breath in between 30. And I'm oxygenating my body at a really high level. After I do that, while I'm doing it, I expose my upper torso to sunlight because it's super good for you. You're getting vitamin D. And when the sun comes up in the morning for the first 45 minutes, there's no ultraviolet rays. And so it's all super good for you. You won't get sunburned, any of it. After I do that, I do my grounding. I do earthing. I take my shoes off. I go outside because I live up here in the mountains. So I go over here on the other side of my cabin and I put my bare feet on the planet. And go Google it. And there are so many benefits from grounding and earthing. Our great grandparents, they walked around barefooted. They were very grounded. But today we don't. We wear rubber shoes and our feet never touch the planet. Well, that's not good. You're supposed to. It's really important. And then, once I do that, I come in, I've got some meditation that I do. I like to read 10 pages in a good book every day. That one thing right there will change your life. Guaranteed. One little change, reading 10 pages in a good book every day. Guess what that does over a year? That's 10 really good books. Do you think if you read 10 really good books, it would have influenced your life? Of course it's going to. Absolutely. Then you probably see this coming. After that, I hydrate because I live up in the mountains. So I have mountain spring water coming into my home. I'm drinking pure live water. I learned a long time ago. I follow a guy by the name of Gary Brecken. I would highly encourage your listeners to do the same. God, Gary's amazing. What Gary told me a long time ago, he said, don't ever drink tap water, period. It's toxic. It's poison. They killed it. Here in America, we've got chemicals like fluoride, chlorine. That's not good for you. It's not hydrating you either. So I live up in the mountains. That's my choice. Live where you love and love where you live. And so then, of course, I take my shower. I take a normal shower. I take a hot shower, very hot shower. I clean up and I get the hot water really hot. And then I turn the water off. And then I set a timer for 3 minutes. You probably see this coming, right? I turn on the cold water. Well, the water coming into my cabin is 58 degrees. It's cold. So I do a cold shower every single morning, or at least every morning I'm home. When I'm traveling and on the road and I have to take a shower in tap water, municipal water, I don't do a cold shower because it's not cold enough. Gary recommends that try to get your water under 60 degrees. I've been doing that for well over a year and a half. I've been doing cold shower. And it does what it does. Because as soon as that cold water hits you in the face, it takes your breath away. And then your body goes into fight or flight. It thinks you're dying. So what's it do? It sends all the blood inside to protect your internal organs, and it sends blood to your brain to protect your brain. And your liver releases some enzymes. And so it kills inflammation. We know that Olympians have been taking cold water or ice baths for a long time to help with the inflammation in their muscles and all that. But we found out now that the benefits, the health benefits with cold plunges and cold showering is just absolutely incredible. So that's pretty much my daily routine. And so again, are those things hard? Yeah, they are. Are they really good for you? Yeah, you better believe they are. Because I'm influxing my body with all this oxygen. Because here's what I've learned. Disease and sickness cannot survive in an oxygenated environment. Either can cancer. Then I'm putting all that sunlight, all that pure vitamin D, and your body's processing it. Now, you can take vitamin D if it's a good vitamin. But man, when you're getting it from the sun, it doesn't get any better than that. I'm grounding myself, right? So the electromagnetic system in my body is working the way it's supposed to. And then I kick out all that inflammation in my cold shower. And I'm drinking mountain spring water. That's mountain spring water right there. The well's right over there. And so it's just what we do on a daily basis to take good care of ourselves. And from my perspective, I've got 2 grandkids. Kaden is 7, and Charlotte, my granddaughter, is, what is she now? 15 months, 16 months. And here's the deal. I'm 70. I want to see her graduate from high school. I owe that to her. And so that's a driving force inside of me. So I'll be 88 years old. I got to take care of myself, because if I don't, I'm not going to make it. Because what's going on out there today, the chemicals and the toxicity and the air and the water and all the things, I pay really close attention to all that. I have to be a good steward, because if I don't, I won't make it to her graduation. So that's, again, it's back to that purpose. It's that driving force within us. I want to live to see all that. I want to see my grandson get married, and maybe someday even see my great grandchild. So it's pretty easy. It's simple. It's not easy, but it's simple, if that makes sense.
You're putting me to shame there, Dave. I was looking at my water and it's like, I've got one of these bottles. So
You didn't know. You didn't know. You didn't know. It's not your fault. I get it. The challenge with water in a plastic bottle, if it's sitting in a warehouse and the temperature gives it above like 100 and some degrees, that plastic will leach into the water. So when I'm on the road, buy water if I can, I buy it in a glass. Yeah, you pay a little more. Okay. Your body's 70% water. Do you think quality of the water that you drink is important? Well, of course it is. Absolutely it is. So when I get it, again, I'm going to defend you, because you didn't know. Because we don't know what we don't know until we know. So now you can do something about it. There's all kinds of things you can do. You can buy, there's systems you can buy, and if you're on city water, you can pour it through there and it takes out the chemicals and takes out the fluoride and the chlorine, and at least you can get all the chemicals out. The best water on earth is coming out of a creek. or it's pure lake water or a stream. That's the water our ancestors drank. Now, you just have to make sure that if you're drinking creek water or from a stream, what's going on upstream? That's what you need to know. Was there a farmer up there? Is he putting chemicals in the water? Is he raising cattle or livestock? And are they, you know what, in the water? So you got to be careful of that. But when you have a well, my well goes about, I think my well's about 127 feet down. That water's clean. And I've had it tested. So those are things to focus on. That it's amazing that we don't. Why don't we focus on this stuff? Because to me, it's important. I read a book years ago called The Secret Life of Water by Dr. Masaru Emoto. Incredible. He taught me so much about water. It's incredible. Water has memory. It's really cool stuff. And that's the other thing, is that I have this thirst, since we're talking about water, I have this thirst to learn and know and learn and apply it and master it and then teach it. Because that's the key, right? You got to give it, if you want to keep it, you got to give it away. And so, like, how many listeners right now are listening to, wow, I never even thought about the idea about plastic and water. I never consider it. I maybe never even considered the tap water. If I go to a restaurant and they serve me water, I smell it. I'm like, nope. I'll ask them, is your water filtered? Otherwise, I won't drink it.
So, Dave, thank you so much. Honestly, there's been like
Of course.
so many amazing insights that you've shared, your stories, like I said, those facts around a healthier style of living, I think are incredible. So I really do appreciate those. Just before we finish up, if people want to know more about the great work that you're doing, how can they find you? And would you like to share details of some of the things that you're doing?
Yeah, sure. Of course. Well, obviously you can go to our website. That's the easiest place to find us. That's firewalkadventures.com. And I'm guessing you'll probably put a link in the show notes so they can get that there. One thing that a lot of people are interested, you can hire me to this day. Corporate, just like corporate America, you have an event, you want to bring us in, they can do that. Something else that a lot of people are interested in is something I do once a year, and it's called the Dave Albin Firewalk Academy. And that's where they come to me and you spend 5.5 days with me up here in the beautiful Appalachian Mountains. And I teach you everything I know. I teach you how to facilitate a firewalk, glass walking, the board break, the brick break, the arrow break, the rebar bend, all of it. How to talk to fire marshals, how to get approved, how to do the whole thing. So now you can take all that knowledge, wisdom, and experience, and you can go back and facilitate in your own community. So if you want to do private events, you want to do it within your own company, because I get a whole array of different people. I get people that come from the HR department of big companies and they send somebody and we train them and then they go back and facilitate within their own company. I get entrepreneurs, I get business owners, I get trainers, I get coaches. So the academy happens once a year. So again, you would come here to North Carolina, you spend 5.5 days with me, and I promise you it will be one of the most 5.5 incredible days of your entire life. Very powerful. And the skills that you'll walk away with are really awesome. One other thing, I created a nonprofit. It's called Operation Do No Harm. And so we do firewalks for 4 categories of people, nonprofit. So if you want to sponsor one of those as a corporation, you can do both. You can hire us to do your own company, but you can invite veterans, first responders, single mothers, or kids that have been neglected, abused. So that's really powerful because obviously there's a high suicide rate amongst those 4 categories. So they can do that as well.
Oh, brilliant.
So that's where we are.
Wow, what an amazing cause. So thank you so much for sharing that. And yes, well, we
Yeah.
include those links in the show notes for people as well. So if you're driving,
Fantastic.
don't worry. You don't have to stop the car and take all this down. Dave, it's been an absolute pleasure, honestly. And I just want to thank you for your time today. And yeah, I'm really excited to see some of the good work that you're doing as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man. Let's do it again sometime.
It's the end of another episode. Thank you so much for listening. Please do connect with me via LinkedIn and drop me a message and let me know your favorite takeaways from the episode. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Superpower School newsletter so that you can be notified of all future episodes. simply visit the website www.superpowers.school. Thank you once again.